Thank you for joining us for All Things MSP Live. My name is Eric Anthony. I'll be your host tonight, and we really do appreciate you spending some time with us. Now, you may be asking, what is All Things MSP? We are a community, first and foremost, of MSPs and people around the MSP industry, vendors, subject matter experts, all that kind of stuff, and we're talking about the non-technical side of being an MSP. Now, most of our activity happens in our Facebook group. That's the platform that we've been on the longest. You can join us there at facebook.com/groups/all things MSP. There's about 6,000 members in the group, and somebody is there waiting to talk to you. And we also, if you don't do Facebook, we have a LinkedIn company page. So you can go to linkedin.com/company/all things MSP. Now, last but not least, we also have a YouTube channel. So you can head on over there. This is where you can probably get the best experience watching the live stream because it allows us to interact better through the comments there. But also, we publish a weekly podcast there as well, in addition to publishing it to all of your favorite podcast platforms. But we also post other pieces of content as well. So make sure you go there, you like, you subscribe, you do all the things to make sure you get notified so that you'll know when we post new podcasts, as well as we're doing a new live stream. Now, the live stream is typically every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We try not to miss it, but sometimes life happens. Okay, we got about 19 seconds left before we start the show. We'll see you there. The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of its participants and do not reflect the views and opinions of any employer, MSP, sponsor, advertiser, or vendor. Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another All Things MSP Live. It's been a while. Just a stream of events. I did take a 2-week vacation, which was lovely. Got to see my friend Sean Walsh down in Aruba and his wife. Got to go out to dinner with them. It was amazing. And, if you have that time to take to unplug and truly reset, absolutely recommend it. Now, we're going to be talking about a topic tonight that I kind of got inspired by the GTIA State of the Channel 2025 report. And that is kind of this disparity between cloud services revenue and cloud services profit. And there seems to be a little bit of a unfairness, let's call it, to the MSPs when it comes to that. So we want to talk about that, and we want to talk about some of the ways to fix it. But before we get into that, I do want to call out our sponsors for this evening. Our premier sponsor is Helped. If you're looking for someone to help you out with help desk and just that extra workload, absolutely check out Helped. You can look them up at atmsp.link/helped, and that's HELPT. Because some people might be listening to this, who knows, and not watching it, but really you should be watching it. And then our vendor sponsor tonight is Compliance Scorecard. If you are an MSP, you need to be getting into the compliance as a service space. And so this is something that I recommend for every MSP. You have clients that have compliance requirements. It is going to be very, very rare today that you are not going to have clients that have some type of compliance requirement. So reach out to Compliance Scorecard at atmsp.link/compliance scorecard and check out all the options that they have for helping you with that compliance. Now, one of the things that happened recently, and one of the reasons I haven't done the live stream in several weeks, is the fact that I was at GTIA CCF. Now, if you're not familiar with GTIA, and I mentioned it at the beginning of the show, that is the community arm of what used to be CompTIA. So it is the Global Technology Industry Association. And so they're still doing all the great things that they were doing before. But I have to tell you, I've been to a lot of CCFs, and there was a different feeling to this one. It almost feels like a weight has been lifted since, they no longer have the certification arm attached. That sounded weird, but you probably know what I mean. And I really feel like this is going to be a transition point for GTIA to do all of the things that I think a lot of us were hoping they would do when they were still part of CompTIA. So, along that vein, I would also like to say that ChannelCon is coming up. July 29th. Font problems. Sorry. I'm blaming their font. It's really my eyes. I'm getting that old, folks. So July 29th through the 31st is ChannelCon this year, and it is in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, if you have not been to Nashville recently, especially for an MSP event, I almost think that Nashville is my favorite place to go for almost any kind of event. And it's not just the music, it's just a combination of how friendly the city is and the music and just everything else. I just think it's a cool city. So if you get a chance, you should definitely check out ChannelCon this year. I think it's going to be an event to remember, especially with the separation of CompTIA and GTIA. I think this is going to be an opportunity to do some really cool stuff this year, and I will definitely be there. Okay. Now, last but not least, in terms of announcements, 2025 sponsorship prospectus is available for all things MSP. So if you are a vendor in the space and you are looking for an outlet to connect with the community and you're not sure where to do that, you can do that here on All Things MSP. Now, instead of just being a Facebook group sponsor or sponsoring the podcast or the live stream, we actually create a lot of content with our sponsors. And we have sponsorships that start out at $3,500 a year. So very inexpensive to get started with all things MSP. And then just if you want to spend more, we create more content with you. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. Reach out to me at eric@allthingsmsp.com, and we will set up a meeting to talk about that. Okay, now I did want to share one tip tonight because I think I'm going to do that on the live streams, especially when I don't have a guest. I'm going to share something from my personal workspace that I think will be helpful to you. Now, it's very common in this space for ADHD. Okay, because I'm non-diagnosed, but I absolutely recognize that I have a lot of the symptoms. And I think Justin is here in the comments, and I guarantee you that as the host of my podcast, he absolutely knows how ADHD I actually am. And I appreciate him hanging in there with me during those episodes. So one of the methods, one of the hacks that I use is not an uncommon one, but I just wanted to point it out. And that is a Pomodoro timer. And if you're not familiar with that, you can use any timer, but they make special ones. I think I just got this one off of Amazon today for like $17. I have another one that I've been using that you can set the times. This one actually has the times on each side. And so if I flip this up, it'll actually automatically start the timer for 25 minutes. So it has 50 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and 25 minutes. And you can set some custom things, but that's usually enough that when I really need to focus on something, I can just flip this over to 25 minutes. Say I know I have a half an hour to get, some extra focus work done. I don't have to watch the clock. This will buzz or ding or whatever when those 25 minutes are over. And then I know I still have 5 minutes to transition into whatever meeting or other type of work that I have to get done. So Pomodoro timer, absolutely one of my favorite tools for getting focus work done because I don't have to watch the clock. And for somebody who has symptoms of ADHD like I do, it's absolutely phenomenal for keeping your focus and keeping you on track. Okay. Of course, that's not what we wanted to talk about tonight. I hope you got something out of it, but that is not what we were going to talk about tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about cloud services revenue versus cloud services profit. And this is something that I've seen for a while. And you usually see it with some of the more commodity based cloud services, right? And I'll just call them out: Microsoft 365, Google Workspace. You guys don't make any money on those, right? Right. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But first of all, let's go through some of the data and some of the comments from the GTIA State of the Channel report. So, first one here is 4 in 10 respondents say that there's going to be a significant increase in revenue from cloud services in the next 2 years. And so that's about 40%, right? I think the actual number was like 41%. And that's up from 29% just last year in 2024. So, relatively big difference for a 1 year differential. So, it's that's a full 12% increase year to year. So, actually, you look at that, you're like, great number. We're going to, sell 12% more in cloud services next year. But is that really the whole story? I don't think it is, because what's happening is, while they're saying that they expect cloud services to bring in significantly more revenue, fewer believe that the profitability is going to be as good. And there's a lot of things that go into this, and love to hear your ideas in the chat. Make sure you go ahead and put some of your ideas in the chat, but we're going to go over some of these things that I think why this is happening, and then some of the things that you can do to remediate it. So, first of all, why the gap? One of the main problems is that a lot of vendors, they don't match their compensation to how the channel partners are actually transacting these SaaS subscriptions. So the vendors are looking at volume primarily, and the MSPs are just trying to deliver a service. And in order to, and I think one of the pitfalls here is that a lot of times MSPs, because they want to manage the service well, they want to sell that service so that they have more control over it. And then another quote from GTIA: incentive structures may focus heavily on acquisition rather than retention, undermining the long-term value. And of course, with managed services, we know that long-term value is, or lifetime value is, one of the key components of having a successful MSP, because the longer you can hold on to a client, the more profitable they become, especially if you're handling them correctly. Now, what are some of these, differentiators? Well, annual commitments versus the typical month to month in the MSP model. So we saw this with Microsoft in the last couple of years, right? Where they moved to an annual model. Okay. But the MSPs still want to charge month to month. So this causes a couple of different problems. So the first one is, if a client leaves and there's an annual agreement, if your managed services agreement does not include the fact that they have to pay you for that whole year, either up front or if they decide to leave, then you're left holding the bag. And I know a lot of MSPs, this is probably not in their managed service agreement because they haven't updated their managed service agreement since this started happening more and more regularly. And then the other thing that is obviously going to erode margin is the higher cost for the month-to-month option. And a lot of MSPs don't like having to go to their clients and saying, hey, you need to pay me more because we're going month to month, and that costs more with Microsoft. So a lot of different things that you can do here that can help remediate that, and we'll get to it in a few minutes. A couple of more. Vendors are focused, like I said, on acquisition versus MSPs focused on lifetime value, and too much dependency on volume and not value. And that is one of the biggest divides, I think, in the philosophy behind how the large cloud vendors are thinking versus how the MSP is thinking. The cloud vendor is trying to make money on volume. The MSP is trying to make money on value. And it's that value that should drive your added profitability. And that's what I'm going to get to in just a minute. So, how do you work this out as an MSP? How do you create add on bundles or extra services that are going to drive that margin up from your base commodity cloud services? So, first of all, if you're not doing consulting and project service on some of these cloud services, you absolutely should be. If they want templates created, or they want workflows created, or they want special, filters or anything that you have to develop, okay, that should not be under your managed services agreement. That should be a separate consulting or project service that you actually charge for. Now, that's not to say you can't include it in your managed services agreement, but it needs to be scoped in your managed services agreement so that you're actually getting paid for it in that managed services agreement. It needs to be added to the cost so that you can mark it up appropriately. Then, add maintenance and support services. I've said for years, because of the low margins, especially with things like Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, that you are adding value on top of the actual product. You're not just handing them a product and saying, here, call me if you need me. Well, some of you are, because some of you are still doing hybrid, but you know what I mean. You need to be charging for the management of that cloud service. Microsoft isn't managing it for you. You're doing the work to manage it. So again, you need to be charging for that. It needs to be part of your managed services price, or it needs to be somewhere in there as an add-on to your services. If you're doing, say you're doing cafeteria pricing, right? You're listing a price for every little thing that you deliver to them. There should be a line for Microsoft 365. There should be a line for Microsoft 365 support. Now, would I bundle it all together into one managed services agreement? Absolutely, I would. So that's what I would recommend. But absolutely make sure that your management and support and the maintenance, all the things you do behind the scenes for Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace or any other cloud service for that matter, is in your cost so that you're marking it up appropriately to get all of the revenue and all of the profit that you deserve from the value. I'm going to key in on that word tonight, that you're getting the value out of what you're delivering to the client. Okay. Third, and this is probably one of the best ways I think to add profit margin to some of these other cloud services, and that is to add higher margin add-ons. So quite frequently, backup has really good margins. And so if you can offer a backup for those cloud services, or identity monitoring to control, user cost, making sure you only have the number of users that you need to pay for say, QuickBooks or whatever it is. And making sure that you don't have people in there that were fired 3, 6, 9 months ago. Compliance. A lot of your clients are now required to have different compliances around these cloud services. So you want to make sure that you have bundled in some type of compliance service with that cloud service. And of course, we can, mention our vendor sponsor from tonight, Compliance Scorecard. They can actually help you with all of those compliance things and making sure that you have the policies in place and are monitoring that compliance on a regular basis. And then, of course, for a lot of these cloud services, there are security options available that you can add on, things like configuration management. Okay, software that will go out and look at your configurations for these cloud services and make sure that security hasn't drifted or that some new setting hasn't been added that you haven't configured. There are different solutions out there to do that as well. And a lot of these, because they are specifically aimed at the MSP, quite frequently have a better margin than the commodity-based cloud services. And therefore, you'll be able to go in there and make more margin and, in my opinion, deliver actually a better service to the client, because who doesn't need backup for their important cloud services? whether it's the ones we mentioned before, whether it's, QuickBooks, anything that has data in it that your client would be really stuck if they didn't have, deserves to be backed up. And so that's a no-brainer for the ones especially that are storing a lot of data. And then those other ones that I mentioned, especially if you have the clients, and think of like accountants and car dealerships now that have to adhere to the FTC guidelines. Those are compliances and they need to be met. And basically, those FTC guidelines, from what I understand, they apply to everyone who finances things through their own financing program, say in a store. If they collect personal financial information from people to process a credit application, then they're going to need to comply with FTC. So, lots of reasons to be able to bundle these things onto their existing services, those low margin services that they may already have. So, a lot of different things you can do. And, just don't leave money on the table. And especially don't spend a lot of time selling low margin services when there are higher margin services as well as add ons that you can add to these products to make sure that you are getting the value that you're delivering. And again, folks, that's really what it's about. It's about capturing the value in dollars of what you're delivering to the client, because these things have value. I mean, look at it this way. Just because it's delivered via the cloud doesn't mean that it doesn't have a cost. And just because you are employing, say, a tool to manage it better does not mean you're not driving the same value. So find the best way at the lowest margin to deliver value, and that's going to increase your margin. The example that I would use in terms of delivering value is antivirus and patch management. I mean, I'm old when it comes to this stuff. When we started doing patch management and antivirus updates, we did them chair to chair. I would show up once a month at a client and actually sit in every single chair in front of every single computer and make sure that virus updates were done and make sure that patch management was done. It's the way we did it in the old days. Now, enter RMM, and it completely changed the game on all of that. And of course, in that same time period, antiviruses started to update themselves. You didn't have to load new definitions all the time. And so you were getting a lot faster at this. You could do it a lot more often, which actually raised the value of what you were delivering, but it decreased your cost by a lot. My question to you, did the value change? Yes, the value actually went up. So you shouldn't charge less. You could actually charge more. Now, of course, competition is going to come in there and do some different things. But anyway, you should absolutely be looking at all of your pricing from a value position, not from a cost plus position. Okay. And, I just, for fun, I had ChatGPT create this little infographic. If you have not used the recent updates to ChatGPT and its image creation, absolutely try it out again, because I literally just told it, give me an infographic that shows the problems and how to fix them for revenue versus profit in cloud services. And it did a really great job. Vendor compensation models are out of whack. We know that. Unpredictable cash flow because of the annual agreements and most MSPs maintaining a month-to-month relationship with their clients. Customers buying in direct, which is not one we talked about, and one that we probably should talk about for at least just a moment, right? And that is some MSPs, and I did this with hardware, by the way. I did this with hardware because I didn't want to be in the hardware business because margins got to be so low. Because the margins got to be so low, I actually stopped selling hardware. And some MSPs are taking the same stance with cloud services. And I don't think that's the answer, because I think you can still control the cloud services more. Just like, by the way, I was wrong when I tried to get out of the hardware business, because the more you control something, the more you manage it. And so, mm, don't take my advice for, letting the customer buy hardware direct, or uh, to change the model to today's model. Don't do the same thing with cloud services either, because you want to maintain that control. But some MSPs just think it's easier to say, Mr. Customer, you buy your Microsoft 365, and we're going to charge you to support it. Now, what's interesting in that model, though, is that now you're actually capturing, we're going to charge you to support that Microsoft 365. And so, because there's that separation there, the client is more likely to say, okay, well, I get that, because I'm just buying the software. Microsoft is not going to support me. So I'm going to have you support me, and that's worth money. So it's sometimes difficult to have that conversation, but definitely one that you need to have, because even if you're still selling them their 365 licenses, they are they need to understand the value of the add-ons, not just add-ons in terms of software, but add-ons in terms of support and management and all of that security that you're doing. There's a dollar amount of value to that, and they need to understand that. So, but it is still, I would call it a problem or a risk when customers take their 365 licenses direct. That may be an unpopular opinion, but that's mine. Focus on volume, not value. We talked about this previously. Uh, for sure, vendors are just trying to ring that cash register as many times as they can. And that's not what the MSP is about. The MSP is about delivering a business outcome where IT is not getting in the way of the business doing its daily work. Bottom line, you guys are delivering something that Microsoft could never deliver in terms of continuity and uptime and all of that. And by the way, specialized solutions. Like I said in the beginning of this, I think building templates, creating workflows, all of those things are essential to a business running. But Microsoft's not going to do that. But it has extreme value to the business, because one template could save them hours a day. So definitely think of it from that vein. One of the things that we didn't mention so far is that, yes, you could negotiate better terms with the vendors. However, a lot of times with smaller vendors, or with smaller MSPs and their vendors, like especially like Microsoft or Google, you are not going to be able to do much negotiation in with those companies, because you're just not material enough to them, right? However, you could become part of a buying group, or you could purchase through a marketplace or a distributor. Use the marketplace specifically because of Pax8's full page ad in the New York Times. If you didn't see it, check it out on social media. I think it's a very good spin on what they do differently, and I think it is important to differentiate that. Build retention packages. Make sure you're building these packages of services around these cloud services that are going to create a better experience for the client, or create a lower risk profile, or give them a better business outcome. All of those types of things built into a package around that cloud service is going to help you retain that client, and at the same time increase your margins on that overall delivery. And then develop high margin services. There's a lot of services that you can provide, especially one-time services around consulting and deployment of these cloud services, that can really generate a lot of, pretty much labor only, high profit revenue, while you're helping them out with specifically making that cloud service work for them the way their business needs to make it work. All right. Well, I think that's all I had for tonight. Let me go ahead and switch. There we go. Really interested in what you guys think about this. So if you have any comments, I'd go ahead and put those into the chat window of either YouTube or Facebook, or I guess LinkedIn. I guess LinkedIn, I can't comment to, but you guys' comments are coming in because that's where Justin is watching us. So I wanted to put this together because I was reading the State of the Channel 2025 report. And if you haven't, by the way, you can download it for free. Take a look. It has a lot of great information about different things that are moving and changing the MSP industry and the technology industry as a whole in terms of what's coming up, some predictions over the next year or so that you can actually look at and make decisions for your business around. So definitely recommend that you go download that, take a look at it. Over the next several weeks, on the weeks where I don't have a guest for the live stream, we're actually going to dive into some of the other topics that I find interesting out of the State of the Channel report. However, next week, we're going to have a guest on, and it's going to be I think this is important because if you didn't get it from tonight's episode, I'm kind of big on this whole compliance thing. And so Mike Semmel, a lot of you know him, is going to be on next week to talk about CMMC. And there are a lot of aspects around CMMC that the average MSP may be shying away from because they don't know that there are certain levels of CMMC that they can absolutely help clients out with without a lot of specialized knowledge. Now, no doubt, there are certain levels of CMMC that require special certifications, special education, all of these things. But there are other levels where you can really help out especially a client that maybe is not the actual contractor to the DoD, but a subcontractor to the contractor to the DoD, where their restrictions and their compliance is not as strict. So join us then for that. That will probably be a full hour. Tonight's obviously not going to be a full hour because I think we're going to end it here pretty soon. Thank you so much for showing up, and really do appreciate all of those people who come here. And I know a lot of people are out tonight. A lot of people are in at ASCII in Orlando and in other events. So, a lot of great stuff going on the channel. Oh, and I should mention Justin, not just because he's here, but Justin's ACES conference, which is an Apple consultant specific conference, is happening in May. So if you are an Apple consultant or deal with a lot of Macs in your environments, check it out. And Justin, if you're still here, you can put it in the chat if I get it wrong. I believe it's ACES, CONF, for ACES conference. So acesconf.com. And you can check it out. Check out who the speakers are and everything. I went last year. It was a great show. Unfortunately, I won't be there this year just due to some conflicts. But, a lot of great stuff going on. And again, I appreciate everybody being here tonight. And if you're watching this, and in the reruns, in the YouTube channel, whatever, go ahead and comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on cloud services and the revenue versus profit dilemma. And we'll check it next time. Talk to you later. Bye. Hey, thanks for watching All Things MSP Live. You can reach me, Eric Anthony, at eric@allthingsmsp.com. If you're a guest, if you're a vendor, if you want to sponsor the show, let me know.